Ethan Reyes had lived in Willow Creek for barely 3 weeks, but already the quiet town felt both comforting and painfully lonely. He had moved hoping for a fresh start, something soft to land on after months of feeling invisible in his long-distance relationship with Daniel. Their calls had become shorter, their messages less frequent, and the warmth that once wrapped around Ethan like a blanket had thinned into something fragile and cold. Tonight was another reminder. Daniel had promised to call after work, but Ethan had sat with his phone beside him for hours, watching the battery drop lower and lower until the screen finally went dark. No call, no message, not even an apology. Restless and slightly feverish, Ethan stepped outside into the cool night air. His head ached, and he realized he had run out of the cold medicine he needed. The nearest convenience store was only a few minutes away, and though it was late, he hoped it might still be open. He wrapped his jacket tighter and walked down the quiet street, passing shuttered windows and sleeping porches lit only by the flickering glow of a few street lamps. When he reached the store, the front lights were off, but the door was slightly ajar. He hesitated. The handwritten sign on the door read, "Open 24 hours." So maybe the power flickered? Maybe the clerk was in the back restocking? Ethan gently pushed the door wider, calling out a soft hello as he stepped inside. No answer. The store was dim, shelves casting long shadows across the floor. He spotted the medicine aisle and walked toward it, hoping to grab what he needed and leave an IOU if the register wasn't working. He just wanted to stop the pounding in his skull. The moment he reached for a box on the shelf, a beam of bright light exploded behind him. A firm voice shouted, "Don't move." Ethan froze, heart slamming in his chest. The flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, landing directly on him, followed by the silhouette of a uniformed officer approaching with caution. It was Sheriff Lucas Ward. Ethan had seen him around town, tall, steady, carrying an air of calm authority. But right now, Lucas looked stern, focused, assessing the situation with sharp eyes. "Step away from the shelf," Lucas said, keeping his hand near his waist, though he didn't look aggressive, just cautious. I'm not stealing," Ethan stammered, raising his hands. "I thought the store was open. The door was unlocked. I just need medicine." Lucas motioned him backward, then gently took Ethan's wrists to secure them. His touch wasn't rough, but the cold metal of the cuffs made Ethan's breath hitch. Lucas noticed a tremble in Ethan's hands immediately. His expression softened for a flicker of a moment, but he stayed professional. "We've had reports the store alarm tripped," he said quietly. "I need to verify the situation." Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to cause trouble." Something in his voice, thin, tired, earnest, made Lucas glance at him a second longer than necessary. Ethan looked exhausted, pale, and genuinely frightened. Lucas gently guided him toward the door, speaking in a calmer tone now. "Let's sort this out at the station." The rain had started by the time they stepped outside, soft droplets tapping on the patrol car roof. Lucas helped Ethan into the back seat, closing the door carefully rather than slamming it. As he drove, he kept checking the rearview mirror, his eyes flicking to Ethan's bowed head. Ethan shivered slightly, partly from the cold and partly from the embarrassment burning beneath his skin. "You said you needed medicine?" Lucas finally asked, voice quieter. Ethan nodded without looking up. "Fever," he murmured. "Didn't realize how late it was. I just didn't think." Lucas's gaze lingered on him a moment longer. Something about the young man's vulnerability tugged at him unexpectedly, a feeling he wasn't prepared to examine. At the station, Lucas escorted Ethan inside and uncuffed him gently. Their hands brushed for the briefest second, and Ethan looked up, startled by the warm rush that followed. Lucas paused too, as if the contact had sparked something he wasn't expecting. "You're not in trouble," Lucas said softly. "I believe you, but you shouldn't walk into a dark store alone at night." His tone held concern now, not authority. Ethan nodded, rubbing his wrists lightly. "I really wasn't trying to break in." Lucas exhaled, the edge in his posture fading. "I know." He hesitated, then added, "If you still need medicine, I can drive you to the late-night pharmacy." Ethan blinked. "Really?" Lucas nodded once. "It's raining. You shouldn't walk." And for the first time in weeks, Someone looked at Ethan like he mattered. The next morning, Ethan woke with a faint memory of rain tapping against the patrol car windows and the quiet hum of Sheriff Lucas's voice guiding him to the pharmacy aisles. Lucas didn't hover, didn't judge. He simply walked alongside him, offering small suggestions and noticing when Ethan's hand shook from fatigue. Ethan had thanked him awkwardly before stepping out of the car in front of his apartment, but Lucas had paused, hand resting lightly on the steering wheel, as if he wanted to say more but couldn't. Their goodbye was simple, polite, and strangely weighted. Ethan spent the morning trying not to think about that weight. He made tea, wrapped himself in a blanket, and attempted to distract himself with work. But every time his mind wandered, it drifted the way Lucas had looked at him. Calm, steady, almost protective. Ethan wasn't used to someone paying attention to him that way. Daniel certainly hadn't in a long time. Ethan checked his phone out of habit, but the screen was empty. No missed calls, no messages, no explanation. He shouldn't have cared, but he did. By the time noon arrived, a gentle knock came at his door. Ethan's heart leaped before his mind caught up. It couldn't be Daniel. He wasn't even in the same state. When he opened the door, he found Lucas standing there, holding a clipboard under one arm. Morning. Lucas greeted, voice softened the day before. I just wanted to follow up about last night. Standard procedure. He lifted the clipboard, then added, and to make sure you're feeling better. Ethan blinked. You came to check on me? Lucas shifted, trying to disguise a faint warmth rising in his expression. Yes. Protocol. Ethan almost smiled. Protocol. Sure. Lucas stepped inside when invited, glancing around the small, tidy living room with a kind of curious gentleness, as though he wanted to understand a person who lived here. Ethan answered a few basic questions about the incident, signed the necessary form, and handed the clipboard back. Lucas took it, but didn't move toward the door. Instead, he studied Ethan for a quiet moment. You still look a little pale, Lucas said. Did the medicine help? Ethan felt his chest warm unexpectedly. No one had asked him that in a long time. Not sincerely, at least. Yeah, he said softly. I think I just needed rest. Lucas nodded. Good. A pause. Gentle, heavy, unspoken. You don't have to stay if you're busy, Ethan finally added. Try not to sound hopeful. Lucas's eyes softened. I'm not busy. The honesty in the statement surprised them both. They talked for a while, small things at first. How Ethan was adjusting to town. How Lucas ended up working in a place where everyone seemed to know your business. Their conversation flowed so naturally Ethan forgot he barely slept. He even laughed at one of Lucas's dry, unexpectedly sharp jokes, a sound that made Lucas smile in a careful, pleased way. It wasn't until Lucas stood to leave that Ethan realized how close they had been sitting. Closer than strangers, closer than people who'd met only the night before. By late afternoon, Ethan's mood had brightened, but guilt crept in too. He checked his phone again. Still nothing from Daniel. Hours later, when Ethan was making dinner, his phone finally buzzed. Daniel. Sorry. Busy day. What's up? Ethan stared at the message for a long time. For hours late. No question about how he'd been. No curiosity. No concern. Not even a voice note. Just routine. Before Ethan could reply, another knock echoed to the apartment. He frowned, drying his hands, and opened the door to find Lucas again, this time holding a small toolkit. You mentioned last night your front lock sticks sometimes. Lucas said, thought I'd help fix it, so you don't get stuck outside again. Ethan blinked in surprise. You remembered? Lucas nodded, stepping inside. I remember most things. The words landed softly but deeply. As Lucas knelt by the door and began adjusting the lock, Ethan stood nearby, watching the way his hands moved. Steady, deliberate, capable. He felt strangely comforted just by Lucas's presence. It was a warmth he hadn't felt in so long, he almost didn't recognize it. When Lucas finished, he stood and tested the lock with a gentle push. There, he said. Smooth now. You won't have trouble with it anymore. Their eyes met, closer than before, breath mingling in the stillness. For a moment neither stepped back. Neither wanted to. The air between them felt charged. not with anything inappropriate, but with an understanding that neither had expected, an ache for connection, for gentleness, for being seen. Ethan broke the moment first, voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Lucas." "Really?" Lucas's expression softened, his voice low. "Anytime." He stepped back then, not because he wanted to, but because he knew he should. Ethan watched him walk down the dim hallway, the warmth he brought lingering long after he'd disappeared. Only after closing the door did Ethan realize the truth, settling quietly inside him. He had confided more to Lucas in 2 days than he had to Daniel in months, and that scared him as much as it comforted him. For the next 2 days, Ethan moved through his routines with a quiet confusion pressing against his chest. He cooked, he worked, he tidied the apartment, but every moment of stillness brought him back to Lucas. The sheriff's steady voice, the way he listened without judgment, the gentle patience in his eyes. Ethan hadn't meant to let those moments matter. He hadn't meant to feel anything at all. But something had shifted, slowly, softly, undeniably. Daniel finally called on the third night. Ethan stared at the vibrating phone for several seconds before answering. Daniel's voice came through distant, distracted, as though he were multitasking while talking. "Hey, you okay? You sounded weird in your last message." Ethan breathed in. "I was sick," he said. "Really sick. I even had a run-in with the sheriff because the store was closed and—" Daniel cut him off. "Wait, what? Why were you out so late anyway? You know you do stuff without thinking." The sting was immediate. Not worry, not warmth, just criticism. Ethan swallowed. "I needed medicine. I wasn't feeling well." "Next time, just wait," Daniel said simply, as if the solution were obvious. Ethan stared at the wall, feeling something in him quietly fold shut. "Did you even read the messages I sent that night?" he asked. A short pause. "I skimmed them. Sorry, I've been busy." Busy. The same word he had been using for months. The same excuse Ethan had accepted again and again. But now, after meeting someone who genuinely showed concern, the excuse fell flat. "Daniel," Ethan finally said, rubbing his forehead, "do you still want this relationship?" Daniel sighed, annoyed. "Why are you doing this right now?" "I said I've been busy." "That's not an answer." Another pause, a heavy one. "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "We barely see each other. Maybe it's just not working like before." Ethan closed his eyes. There it was, the truth he had been avoiding. "Maybe we should talk about ending things." "Maybe," Daniel said quietly, not fighting, not asking him to stay, just letting it happen. The call ended with no anger, no emotional breakdown, only silence. And in that silence, Ethan realized the relationship had ended long before the words did. Later that evening, Ethan stepped outside to clear his mind. The sky was dark, washed with muted stars. A light breeze pushed through the trees. He sat on the small stair outside his apartment, letting the cool air steady him. That was when a familiar patrol car slowed beside the curb. Lucas stepped out, his expression softening when he saw Ethan sitting alone. "You okay?" he asked. No hesitation. No distance. Just genuine concern. Ethan looked up at him, tried to smile and failed. "I ended things with Daniel," he said, the words faint but real. Lucas didn't move closer immediately. He gave Ethan a moment, but the empathy in his eyes was unmistakable. "I'm sorry. That can't be easy." "It's strange," Ethan whispered. "It hurts, but it also feels like I've been holding on to something that was already gone." Lucas nodded slowly. Sometimes letting go is the hardest part, especially when you're used to being the one who tries. Ethan looked up, surprised at how perfectly Lucas understood. "What about you?" he asked softly. "You never talk about your partner." Lucas's jaw tightened slightly. He exhaled. "Mark and I, we've been done for a while. We just hadn't said it out loud yet." Ethan studied him. "Because of me?" Lucas shook his head gently. "No, because we stopped being what we were. You didn't cause anything. You just reminded me what it feels like to care." The honesty caught Ethan off guard, warmth blooming beneath the sadness. They sat there, a few feet apart, but the emotional distance between them had vanished. After a long moment, Lucas sat beside him, not too close, not too far. The night felt still, as if listening. Ethan spoke first. "Lucas, that night at the store, when you arrested me, I thought it was the worst moment of my life." Lucas huffed a quiet laugh. "I didn't expect it to become anything except paperwork. But it did," Ethan said softly. "It became this." His voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from truth. "You were the first person in a long time who actually looked at me, who noticed if I was okay." Lucas turned toward him, eyes gentle and warm. "You deserve someone who sees you, someone who shows up, every time, not just when they feel like it." Ethan's breath caught, the words sinking deep. "And you?" Lucas held his gaze. "I show up for you, Ethan." The space between them felt fragile, suspended. Lucas didn't reach out, not until Ethan's hand brushes lightly, a quiet invitation. Lucas answered by taking his hand gently, carefully, as if asking permission even in the act itself. Their fingers intertwined, not boldly, not impulsively, but with the soft certainty of two people choosing something real after too long in the dark. They sat like that, hand in hand, as the night settled around them. No dramatic declarations, no rushed promises, just an honest, new beginning gently unfolding in the quiet. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't feel alone. He felt found.